Good evening and welcome to Yeshiva University's second book talk of the fall 2020 semester with this evening Dr. Rona Milch Novick, who will present her book, Mommy, Can You Stop the Rain? I'm Tina Weiss, head librarian at the Gottesman Library, and it is my pleasure to host this evening's event. Allow me to introduce you to JB Holderness, who will be handling the tech aspects of this Zoom presentation. We'd also like to thank the Director of Libraries, Paul Glassman, who initiated Book Talks event idea about 3 years ago, as well as Hao Zhang, the Director of ITS at the library. We also have with us this evening, where'd he go? I apologize. Additional assistance from Drew this evening, who will be assisting us. A few procedural notes before we begin. During our speaker's presentation, you may submit questions to the chat. To access the chat at the bottom of the page that you may have open, there will be a chat button, and please submit your questions there. If you, let's see, just wanted to let everyone know additionally that everyone has been muted to reduce background noise for this event. I'd like to introduce Dr. Novick with a brief bio. Dr. Rona Milch is the Dean of Azrieli Graduate School of Jewish Education and Administration and holds the Rain and Stanley Silverstein Chair in Professional Ethics and Values. She also serves as co-educational director of the Hidden Sparks program, which provides professional development to yeshivas and day schools. Dr. Novick developed the Alliance for School Mental Health at North Shore Long Island Jewish Medical Center and serves as its director. She has extensive clinical and research expertise in behavioral management and has delivered numerous presentations at the national and international conferences. Along with many scholarly publications, she is the author of Helping Your Child Make Friends and the editor of the series Kids Don't Come with Instruction Manuals. Her children's book, Mommy, Can You Stop the Rain, is published by Behrman House, Apples and Honey Press. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Novick.
Thank you so much, Tina. And thank you to the library for all of the amazing service that you provide us and for inviting me to share Mommy, Can You Stop the Rain? I'm going to share my screen so that I can share the book with you, as well as some thoughts about where we find ourselves. And, you know, life is just stranger than fiction. You could not make it up that, you know, you work for years on developing an idea for a children's book. You write the children's book that's about dealing with fear and anxiety and how parents can and should reassure even in times of uncertainty. And the book is published in the middle of a global pandemic. So, you know, like I said, you can't make this up. It really is, I don't want to say it's a happy accident because it's kind of an unfortunate accident. So this is the story of how Mommy, Can You Stop the Rain came about. I want to share with you why, how, what, and when this book came into existence, and then share with you the book, the story. The why is really very simple, but it's ancient. It goes back to decades ago when 9/11 hit New York. I was then working not at Yeshiva University, but at Long Island Jewish Medical Center. And we did a great deal of outreach to schools and to first responders who were involved in the 9/11 recovery, who were working at the site and who had unfortunately suffered losses. And what I discovered after 9/11 was that parents asked by their children the simplest of questions would kind of freeze because parents had had the rug pulled out from under them. The world had changed and simple parenting practices became inaccessible to them. So a firefighter who was leaving the house for his shift asked by his 5-year-old, Daddy, will you be home for dinner? Didn't know how to answer. Because in his mind, he was thinking about all of the daddies whose lives were so changed on that day. And what struck me was how important parents are in times of trouble and how much parents can offer, but that at times we lose our parenting sense in crisis and in trauma. And we need to be reminded of how to do that. And even in everyday instances, we could probably use some help as parents, some guidance, but I didn't want to write a heavy-handed book about parents do this. I'd already written parent manuals, and that's pretty much what I do professionally. I had always dreamed of writing for children, and the idea came to me that one of the best ways to speak to parents was to give them a read aloud book that would not only comfort their children, but actually give them the language of comfort that they needed to reconnect to. The book idea played in my head for many years. I had various versions of it that were submitted to publishers and rejected. And as I said, 2 years ago, over 2 years, April will be 2 years. It takes 2 years from the time a children's book is accepted until it is published. So 2 years ago in April, the book was accepted by Berman House. Having a book accepted doesn't mean it's finished. It needs to be lovingly illustrated. And I was really blessed with an incredible illustrator, which you'll see in a moment. And then you see proofs and it goes to print and it takes a very long time. And again, here it was coming out in the middle of a pandemic. What I think that Mommy, Can You Stop the Rain emphasizes in terms of the challenge of reassurance in uncertain times is that it's clearly no less needed. In fact, it's desperately needed. And that the first step of reassurance as a parent, as an educator, even as a friend, has to be validation. We are not reassuring entities when we say, oh, it's nothing, don't worry about it. And yet, that's kind of a parenting reflex. Your child comes to you with a boo-boo, with an injury, and we want to make it all better. So we say, that's nothing. We minimize it. What that does is it forces a child to convince us of how terrible it is. What it also does is it makes the child feel misunderstood and unheard. So we want to start reassuring children by saying, I understand, you're worried. I get it. You don't like this lightning or thunder, as the girl in the book doesn't. We have to also make sure that we are dealing in a developmentally geared way. Reassurance to a teen is so different than reassurance to a toddler. And we have to think about, there's information, if I gave it to a teenager, that it would really help them. They could manage those facts in their head. But if I did that with a toddler, I'd overwhelm them. Reassurance also means avoiding overly optimistic platitudes. We can't promise what we can't deliver. When children come to us and say, well, we won't ever get sick, right? We can't say, oh, of course we'll never get sick. We're young and we're healthy. We can say, we're young and we're healthy. We're not the type of people that usually get sick. And look, we're washing our hands, we're taking good care, we're protecting ourselves with our masks. But the risk of saying something that we can't deliver on is that we then become the opposite of a reassuring parent. We become untrustworthy. Our words lose their value. But probably the most important element of reassurance, both in challenging and in ordinary everyday times, is communicating as a parent our constant caring presence in our children's lives. That we will be there from when they're 2 till when they're 22 till when they're, please God, 72. We will be there in their lives, always loving them, always available to be that sounding board and that reassurance. So rather than just talk about it generally, I want to share the book with you, and then we'll talk about some more. What are the ways, what are the messages that the book has for us in today's times, and answer any questions that you have. So here's Mommy, Can You Stop the Rain? Oops, I don't know why it skips sometimes. And again, these illustrations are, I take absolutely no credit other than falling in love with them. Berman House found a wonderful illustrator by the name of Anna Kubaszewska, and her work is just absolutely beautiful. Mommy, can you stop the rain? No, I cannot stop the rain, but I will dry your hair and wrap you in a towel warm from the dryer. Then we will eat iced cookies with pink sprinkles on top. Daddy, can you shush the thunder? No, I cannot shush the thunder, but I can turn Zadie's chicken soup pot into a drum, and we can march around the table like a band in a parade. Mommy, can you turn off the lightning? No, I cannot turn off the lightning, but I can shine my flashlight into the dark corners and make shadow animals climb into the Noah's Ark picture on your wall. Daddy, can you quiet the wind? No, I cannot quiet the wind, but I will fasten the windows tight and rock with you under Booby's blanket and sing softly in your ear until the wind sounds like a whisper. Mommy and Daddy, can you send away the storm? No, we cannot send away the storm or quiet the wind or turn off the lightning or shush the thunder or stop the rain. But we can stay close and keep you cozy and warm until the last raindrop falls and the morning sun shines on you again. At Berman's House request, all of their books that are for children have a message from the author written to the reader or the parents. And I'd like to share that with you because it really illustrates what the purpose of the book is. When I apologize for the, I said at a meeting today, the house phone is ringing, and my young colleague said, "What is a house phone?" When children are scared, they naturally ask parents and other grown-ups for help. And as much as the grown-ups might want to, sometimes they just can't make scary things go away. The parents in this story can't stop the lightning, but they can make their little girl feel better by reminding her she's not alone. They can't quiet the thunder, but they can drown it out and help her forget the sounds by banging on pots and being silly. And rain or shine, grown-ups can always offer children comfort, reassurance, and love. It's profoundly important for children to know that they can always count on the love and care of the grown-ups in their lives. When children hear this message, "We're here, we love you, we'll comfort you," they learn that someday storms and scary times will end and they'll be okay. In this way, parents' caring comfort builds strong, healthy, independent children who will one day manage through the daily storms of life all by themselves. In response to when the book first came out, in addition to feeling that this was a tool for parents, as we were all shut down and locked down in our homes, it occurred to me that school was going to look quite different for teachers and for students, and that they might benefit from having some materials on how we cope with stress, anxiety, and trauma. And so I developed lesson plans for all the grades from pre-K through 12. They're published on my website. They're free for educators to use. And I started distributing them in September, and I'm beginning to hear from some schools that are now using them. And because of the world we now find ourselves in, the lesson plans are made to be delivered either in person or on Zoom or a combination of the two. I'll take questions and comments in a moment. I've given you here in this slide, and I think Shalamis is going to post it in the chat, where you can access the book. And on my Wix website, you can access the lesson plans. But I'm going to stop sharing in a moment. But if you need this material, we can be sure that we put it in the chat room for you. So please feel free to put questions in the chat room, which I will be happy to answer. What I want to add to the introduction and the book is kind of where we are now and what children need now. and the kinds of struggles that children are having, and also some potential antidotes or ameliorations. None of us can make this go away. We're waiting for that magic pill / vaccine / whatever to bring us back to a new normal. But part of what is really reassuring for both children and adults is to know that it's okay to not be okay right now, that we are in an abnormal situation. And so if you feel more worried, if you feel more sad, if you feel more down, if you have less energy, if you have too much energy and are revved up, then it is very helpful to take away any additional fear that I'm crazy for feeling this way, or there's something wrong with me for feeling this way. And it is so reassuring to hear that's totally normal. It's also very validating. I hear that you're afraid. That nowhere in Mommy, Can You Stop the Rain do the parents tell the little girl not to be afraid. Nowhere do they tell her that thunder is far away, don't worry about it. They validate her by taking her anxiety and her worries at face value, by accepting them as real in her life and not saying, you're crazy for worrying about it. They use an unbelievably effective strategy for toddlers and preschoolers, although it still works for some of us adults. And that is they use distraction. Banging on pots and pans is distracting or redirecting. All of us have been doing it during the pandemic, unfortunately, not always with healthy distractions. For me, it's, a lot of chocolate. So it would be better if, my distraction were exercise or something really healthy. But distraction can work even for adults. And the other elements that the parents provide is evidence of their being in this child's life as helpers and as comfort. I think we all owe a huge debt of gratitude to Fred Rogers, who reminded us in times of trouble to look for the helpers. And the pandemic has given us an opportunity for children to celebrate helpers. There are signs in their windows and their children are making cards and pictures to thank first responders and to thank the mailmen for delivering mail in the pandemic and all of those kinds of things. And those are wonderful strategies to help children recognize that there are helpers and become helpers themselves by giving back in some way, by making a card or a sign of thanks for people who are helping. But in this pandemic, we actually have an ability, unlike the little girl in Mommy, Can You Stop the Rain, to point to the fact that children themselves are helping the situation every time they wash their hands, every time they put on their mask and social distance. They're helping the world stay healthy. They're a helper too. And appealing to older children's altruism and how they can make a difference and help is also a way to be incredibly reassuring. There's an incredible story that happened after Hurricane Katrina in the Astrodome, whichever dome is in New Orleans, where all of the refugees who had lost their homes and been evacuated were being housed. And they noticed that teenagers were incredibly depressed. The living conditions were terrible. There weren't enough mental health workers to service all of these teenagers who were suffering from significant symptoms of depression, certainly also plenty of anxiety and worry. Some brilliant social worker said, we don't have enough time to see all of these teenagers right now, but could we just, for the time being, enlist them in delivering water to the elderly residents of the dome, to the people who can't come down all the steps for the water pickup every day? And they organized the teens into a corps of water distribution agents. A week later, the mental health workers regrouped and said, okay, now we can see some depressed teens. All their symptoms of depression were gone. The act of being a helper is in itself reassuring. It changes us from the victim and helpless stance to the doer and the rescuer and the saver. And that in and of itself, again, is so reassuring. The last thing I want to say, and then I'll, take any questions, and I see one question about the book that I'll answer, is the role of gratitude. It's really intriguing. It makes total sense that on a good day when the sun is shining and the plants are blooming and all your children are well behaved and your car starts in the morning, that you should experience and resonate with gratitude, and that it should make you happy. That's true, and it does work. But it turns out that being able to experience and express gratitude when it's a rainy, miserable day like it was in New York today, when nothing is blooming, when it's cold, when the car won't turn over, when there's flooding in your basement, and when the kids are nagging you. It's in those moments, if we can find the 2 or 3 things that we are thankful for and actually write it down on a daily basis, the research tells us that we will be more resilient, have less worry, have a better immune system, be healthier, live longer, etc. The benefits just go on and on. So working with children now, even in this uncertain time, to focus on, tell me something good that happened to you today. Tell me something, even something very tiny you're thankful for. The bagel this morning was just right. Your friend said hello to you on the way to school today. Whatever it is, but focusing on those elements of gratitude can make a difference. I don't have other formal comments that I wanted to share. That's pretty much what I wanted to say. I could talk forever about what this pandemic is doing to us and the challenges of parenting. I will say one other thing. Really a companion to Mommy, Can You Stop the Rain? The next book should be, can somebody please support Mommy and Daddy through this? Because they're heroes. There's a good reason that when you fly on an airplane, wherever you're going, near or far, there's always going to be the same announcement at some point during the safety presentation. They're going to say, steward or stewardess, if the cabin experiences a sudden loss of pressure, masks will drop from above. And guess what they tell you next? They tell you, even if you're traveling with small children, affix your mask first before helping others. We cannot be agents of reassurance for our children. We cannot support them if we don't take care of ourselves and make sure that whatever fuels us, whatever gives us energy, feelings of safety, we need to make sure that we as parents and as adults have those in our lives so that we can provide it to children. So 2 questions I see that I want to answer. The first is, it's a Jewish publisher. Is this being advertised? It seems to have crossover appeal. So, I've been on such a journey with this book. The book was not originally written as a book with Jewish content. And secular publishers did not accept it as a secular manuscript. When I sent it to Berman House, where they had some knowledge of me and knew me a bit, and I knew some of the editorial people at Berman House, so I had people I knew would look at it and give me a reasonable opinion about the work. They immediately said, well, could we add Jewish content? And it then became a task to take a book that you've, over years have written and developed, and add Jewish content in a way that's seamless. In the same way, to add a very particular Jewish content, so that it isn't a book for one particular type of Jewish, that it is a little bit more broad and not so heavy-handed in the Jewishness in the book. The idea is for it to have a crossover appeal. We are working actually now with PJ Library, which will probably be distributing the book in the future. But that was a decision that the publishing house asked if I would agree to, and I was happy to do that. It is my, my people, my community, so I'm happy to write a book for them. And I do think it has a broad appeal. So there's a question about the child is an intact family. Might a child of divorced or single parents feel greater anxiety? And the answer is, and I'm so glad you asked this question, Hallie, because it reminds me of something I forgot to say. One of the best things that the parents in Mommy Can You Stop the Rain do is what they don't do. They don't run the house. They don't run around the house saying, oh my God, thunder, lightning, I hate this. I'm so scared. Come hide under the bed with me. The biggest influence on whether children will be anxious is not whether they have a single parent, a dual parent, a transgender parent, a dual, single gender family, whatever. That's not what determines it. What determines it is how the adults around them respond. So if you are in a single parent family and that single parent is extremely anxious, whether about their finances, about tension with an ex, about involvement with extended family, that is going to filter down to the child. But I think that there are plenty of intact families that are great anxiety producers, and there are plenty of diverse families that do a wonderful job of sheltering their children from adult worry and anxiety. Let me say there also that by sheltering, I don't mean to raise our children in a bubble. We don't have to be super heroic about this. We don't have to be walking around say, pandemic's pandemic, it's fine, not bothering me, not touching me. So what? I didn't have graduation this year. So what? No simchas the way I wanted. No big deal. No. It's okay for us to be genuine human beings and say, I don't like the thunder either. And I don't like this pandemic. And you know what? There are days that I get a little worried too. That's different than losing it in front of our children. And the last way that parents indirectly have enormous influence on how much children worry is through their media access. Parents should be supervising and have some, at least some take on how much children are exposed to outside your home and inside your home from media influences. It's really hard to avoid the news. It's everywhere. Children carry it on their phones. If they don't, see it, a friend, they'll see it, the friend has a tablet or something, or it's discussed in school. So I'm not saying put them in a bubble and protect them from everything. By the same token, I gave a webinar yesterday about anxiety and worries. And I shared that, after 9:30 at night in my house, you are banned from talking about problems within our family, money, and what's the other one? Oh, there's 3 things. I don't remember. I'll have to remember what the other one is, but you can't do it because if you do that, then I get too anxious and I can't sleep. So those are off the table. Oh, work. We don't talk about work after 9:30 at night. It just gets you too revved up and too worried and anxious. So knowing what your children are watching and limiting that is important. I just want to also say, Hallie, that when I originally wrote the book, there was no dad in it. I wrote a mommy book exclusively. And one of the things that the publisher felt very strongly was that they didn't want to send the message that nurturing, comforting, and reassurance was exclusively the purview of moms and of women, that all parents can and should be agents of reassurance. And that was a change that I made quite happily. And I will tell you, I'm working on the second book in the series now. It's actually sitting, waiting to hear back from publishers. And the title of that book will be Daddy, but all books will now have mommies, daddies, maybe aunts, maybe we'll have more diverse families, maybe we'll include other generations in it. I'm really thinking very much about how we make it clear that grown-ups who care about children, regardless of whether they're moms or dads or single or together or blended or, multi-generational, that all of us share the responsibility for helping children grow in healthy ways. Do I think the best cures today are the same and more effective than they were historically? Len, thank you for that question. I think that every generation of parents has been influenced and victimized by the Gestalt culture of the time, and that we are living in a culture right now of, at least, certainly before the pandemic, where parents could very reasonably expect that their children's lives would be better than theirs. If you go back 2, 3 generations, parents weren't so sure about that, and they had to work very, very hard to ensure that their children would have a better life than they did and less struggle than they did. But there's much less concern about that struggle, and that's led, I think, to parents. We talk about helicopter parenting and over-involved parenting, and parents wanting to smooth the road of all hurdles and potholes for their children. And there's a real problem with that, because I also talk to parents about discipline and behavior, and how do you manage behavior issues. And a parent who never says no because I don't want my child to be upset or disappointed and I want them to have a wonderful life and always be happy, my response to that parent is, at some point in your child's life, they're going to experience no. It may be from an employer, it may be from a girl or boy they want to date, it may be a part in a play or a ball game that they lose, but they're going to have to live through a no. Wouldn't you rather they learn how to deal with no from the person who loves them more than life itself? In the same way, I don't ever want a child to have to be experience what we're going through now. It's horrible. I wish I could protect them. But if they have to live through it, I want to be the one who helps comfort them and helps them understand it. I do think that today's parents are really challenged because, first of all, I'm a grandparent, and I have unbelievable respect for my children who are parenting now and how hard it is. We didn't have so many choices. We didn't have such a hard job of parenting because we had fewer influences on our children's lives and much more control than parents have now. So I do think anxiety is anxiety is anxiety. And some of the same treatments and approaches that have worked over the centuries are still working now. But as parents, we do, and as educators also, I think we have to look really hard at, when do we rob children of the opportunity to build their anti-worry muscles if we smooth over all of life's worries too easily for them? And again, nobody, in Mommy, Can You Stop the Rain, nobody says, we're going to move to a climate where there are no storms. We're going to make sure your life is storm-free from now on. We promise you sunshine and rainbows, although we all know you only get rainbows if there's been rain. So it's a great question. And yet it is, the answer is yes and no. I'm hedging my bet. It's yes, it's the same, and no, it's not. I've been asked to copy I want to see if I can do this. Oops. I was asked to put the website address here, which I'm trying to do, but my computer is not. Here we go. So let me make this to everyone and paste in. There we go. So now you have in the chat, you now have the address for the website, which has material on, it has the lesson plans. It has other materials on anxiety and worries as well. Any other thoughts or questions?
I have a comment. I was really struck by how this can actually be very helpful, not just for the child or children that the parent is reading to. It's also reassuring to the parent who might not know how to react in such a situation, especially sometimes new parents or new situations that arise. It's a great way to deal with basically any situation that can come about, to be a reassuring parent, to be one who says, as you've noted several times, we can't take away these external factors. We can deal with the internal factors as a family. We can come together. We can do things, you said distracting in one way, but to learn that these things may exist, not just today, but in the future. And we can do things to recognize that they're there, but we can just continue and do.
Right. So this also, it relates to Marlene's question. Is it a series, and what's the name of the series, and are they geared to all to younger kids? So when the idea for this book came, and when I thought about, exactly as Tina is saying, writing a book that would in a way almost give the language of reassurance to parents, model it for them through a narrative, through a kind of lyric story. And that I had this vision of, parents reading to their children at night, and both of them getting comfort and reassurance through this act of reading this together. That what struck me was that there are many, and it goes to Len's question also, there are many questions that I think today's parents struggle with, that are tensions between how much reassurance do I give, how much do I let my child just experience some pain and distress? How much independence do I give my child versus what do I do for them? How much do I support their social growth and their friendships? And how much do they have to develop their own styles and their own affinities and hobbies? And so the idea for a series came to me that this is more than one topic or question or issue that parents struggle with, and might I be able to tackle other such issues? The next book tackles the question or the tension of how parents can support children through their growth, but not take away their independence. So the stress and the tension between, do I do your homework with you, for you, or do I just tell you go do it yourself? The books are all written as picture books for about, the 4 to 7 year old age. But when I wrote the lesson plans, and I've done this all the time, I've always used picture books with high school students, not as a parent, but as an educator, reading it, saying, what is the message here? If you were writing a picture book for young students, if you were reading this to students, what questions would you ask them? What would you highlight? So I've always used picture books for young children, that are meant for young children with much older children, to talk about metaphor, to talk about how it can provide a message through narrative or through another vehicle. And Edith, thank you for asking me about what feedback you've received. So every once in a while, I got an unsolicited email from Berman House this week saying, we just got this note from someone saying that this child now, their child insists on reading this book every night. It's become their bedtime ritual, and they absolutely love it. The feedback I got from my own granddaughter when I showed her the book and read it, she said, Safti, you know that mommy can't stop the rain. Only God can stop the rain. Safti, come on. So, you get out of the mouths of babes, wonderful feedback, but she does love it. Several colleagues have told me, one of the strange things about releasing a book in the middle of a pandemic, even a book that has relevance, is that I would have, together with the publisher, I would have been doing book talks and readings with people constantly in order to promote the book. And because as a psychologist who believes very strongly in giving parents the tools that they need in today's world to succeed, I love meeting with groups of parents and talking with them about how they can raise healthy, well-rounded children. But because of the pandemic, I can't do that. So I don't get to meet the readers or the purchasers of the book. In some cases, I get feedback, but in many cases, I don't. So it's hard for me to know. But nobody's told me they don't like it, but I'm assuming if they don't like it, they keep it to themselves. So the feedback has been good.
I see another question. There's a question asking from Shalamis, do you have any plans to write a book for teenagers?
Oh, well, I don't, but I'm always, the thing about, books for teenagers is that teenagers read in writing and in publishing. There are picture books and then there are chapter books. And there's a young adult market, and they're very, very different. Part of my passion has been early childhood and young children. I work with all ages, and I do think teens need to hear good voices. I don't know if I'm the one to write that book, because again, as a writer, that's very different than writing. Picture book is the challenge is you've got somewhere between 75 and 200 words to get your message across. A chapter book, a book for teens, is going to be, it's got to be a much more story-driven piece of literature. And I'm not a writer by trade. I'm a clinical psychologist and an academic. This journey is quite remarkable. It really has been my life's dream to write a children's book. I will tell you that while I was writing Mommy, Can You Stop the Rain, I discovered a website called Storybird. If you don't know about it, Storybird is an online platform for writing stories with artwork of professional artists. And it's no longer totally free, although there are educator accounts that one can get, where your whole class can come together and each person can write a page of the book using the artwork that's provided, that's glorious, gorgeous artwork on the site. And that gave me an opportunity to do a lot of children's book writing, picture book writing. I am not an artist or illustrator. And so having that artwork there was very inspiring for me. But I've never thought about writing a longer book other than in my academic, life, where I write, part of my day job is writing book chapters and things like that. But I would love to find someone. I like your idea, Shalamis, to find someone who might take on the teen authorship and think about that. I'll talk to I have a family member. Maybe I'll put a bug in his ear and see if, and he's a middle school educator, see if it's something he would be up for the challenge. With teens, by the way, also, with young children, you can embed a message in a book without having to be too subtle. With teens, if you're preaching, if you're too direct, they'll reject it. They don't want to be talked down to. They, for good reason, that they're at a very different developmental level, and understanding their sensibilities. It's a real skill to write for them. Well, thank you all so much for joining me this evening. Happy reading. Everybody should just stay safe and curl up with good books.
Thank you so much, Dr. Novick. We want to thank you for sharing your book with us, as well as sharing tips to help children through difficult times, and as well for their parents as well. We have put your website information in the chat. You've put it there as well, and the link for the event let's see what else. Yes, to purchase the book as well. And it will also, I believe it's also posted on the library website. I want to thank everybody for attending, and I wish everyone a good evening.
Take care, everyone. Stay well.